What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. We're here. We're nearing the end of Season 4, right in the meaty center of Deep Space Nine. And today we're talking about Season 4, Episode 17, Rules of Engagement. It's a little bit Deep Space Nine. It's a little bit the practice. I'm excited to talk about it. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Keith. In the watch along today, a good friend of the show, Jason Moe, was asking all kinds of the practiced questions, and it was so funny to even revisit it in the headcanon. He was like, in the practice, have they ever called a lawyer to the stand? And I was like, oh yeah, many times.
Oh,
and they're like,
to 8 seasons.
I was like, I think
yes. The answer is always yes.
I was like, I think Bobby got accused of murder a couple times, and I think once he did it, and it was
everybody
fun.
was a murderer at
and he's
some
like,
point.
was there ever a practice episode with a B story? I was like, oh yeah, we've had B stories, C stories, D stories, B stories coming back. We've had it all. So it was fun to think about.
Yeah, it is crazy. Legal dramas are kind of legal dramas, but I don't think we ever had the convention on the practice of characters breaking the fourth wall like we did in this episode. So
I have a lot to say about that, obviously.
I'm curious.
And I did some research on it, in fact. I can't wait to talk about. And on top of that...
My goodness, all right.
Yeah, and on top of that, I was trying to, think about why that decision was made, and we'll talk about it up front. And I think one of those reasons is because there was no B story, and I think it takes a lot of balls to be like, okay, we're just going to focus on courtroom drama, because there's not a lot of action, and it's only a couple setups. But the practice, to its credit, some of the strongest episodes... and legal dramas in general, some of the strongest episodes were ones where we just stayed in the courtroom and did the legal drama. That's what we're here for.
Well, I mean, it's a legal drama. The whole point is the courtroom. The whole point is the trial and all of that, arguments and such. So it was fun. I'm excited to talk about it. But before we get too far into it, we have to give your ratings of last week's a session. I wrote down Bar Association. It was wrong.
Guys, you see Keith faking it right now? He's faking it. He doesn't feel well.
No, I don't feel well. I'm not feeling well. I'm tired. I'm low energy. It's terrible. But that's all right. I'm an actor, so I'm acting as if I'm not feeling sick and tired. It's going to be fine. And you want to know what was more than fine? Your reviews for a session. Joshua Cronin gives it a 90, Jason Moe with an 86, JD with an 88, Harry Pothead with an 85, and Kevin Miles in with a 91. If you're on our Patreon at patreon.com/KNM, there's some phenomenal discussion there with the mysterious Anne, who leaves very thoughtful and intelligent commentary.
We've missed your commentary, Anne. It's been a few weeks, so I'm glad to have you back in the fold.
Well, this was a good one, and I very much enjoyed it. All right. So, Mike, what do you say we talk about this episode, Rules of Engagement?
No, I knew it. I told you it was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened.
So if you missed K&M Geekly this week, Mike let us know of a thing that he does. Mm-hmm. Apparently, every year, he wipes down and reinstalls clean Windows on his computer, which I sort of get it, but also you're going to screw up literally everything you spent a whole year getting everything tuned and set up. What it reminds me of, because now like everything's all messed up because we had to rebuild everything. Do you remember the Sylvester Stallone movie where it was like him and his grandma? I forget what it was called.
Don't throw Mama from the train?
No, that wasn't that. It was anyway, like the whole thing was like him with his grandma, and he apparently got baited into doing it because Schwarzenegger said like I was gonna do it, so that he took it, and it was like the worst thing he's ever done. But there's a scene in there.
Okay, I was wondering how this connected, but
oh yeah, it has a connection, buddy. It's all there. There's a scene in there where he walks in on his grandma washing his gun in the sink.
I remember the scene. Yeah.
This is the way we wash the gun. And of course, I'm not a firearm person, nor have I ever owned one, or I don't think I've even fired one. But I do know you're not supposed to wash it because it kind of ruins all the stuff. And I think this is Mike washing his windows in the washing machine, and that's when things go wrong.
That I'm not even going to comment on.
I took a journey. Took a journey for that one. I look. I'm not feeling well. Okay, I'm tired. This is the way we wash my brain. The top song. Oh wait. So this aired on April 8th, 1996. We took a month off while we were cooking up some new episodes, which is good, because when we talk about who directed this, it's good he had some more time. The top song was, a new one, Mike. I can't wait. It's Because You Loved Me, the Celine Dion song.
I got a story to tell this week, and you're gonna hear it and laugh because Chancellor Jen loves us.
Wow, I don't remember hearing that one in the 90s. I don't think I knew who Chancellor Jen was at that point.
My dad loved that first Celine CD. That, Garth Brooks, and John Cicada, as we've talked about. Those were his kind of jams in his Cadillac.
Don't forget Yanni at the Acropolis.
Yeah, that never made it to the Cadillac. That was just on Laserdisc, but Celine made it into the Cadillac.
Well, the Cadillac on CD or cassette?
CD. Dad was rocking the CD. Yeah.
Ooh, nice. The top movie was Primal Fear, the Richard Gere movie.
Gere. Yeah. That was after Michael Douglas and Demi Moore had that sexy movie where
Indecent Proposal.
Yeah, right. And no, that's not the one I'm thinking of. Disclosure, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And I think they were like, we need more sexy thrillers. And so Gere was like, I need a sexy thriller.
Well, and that's right. Like Basic Instinct came out. And it was the sexy thriller era of the 90s.
Not to be confused with Michael Jackson's alternate cut of Thriller. That one was weird. The sexy cut of Thriller was...
No, there's nothing sexy about Michael Jackson.
No, you're right. Sorry, that's
a hard pass. Hard pass.
All right, Keith, rather than talk about what was on TV, I want to share a story with the K&M family because it tickled me so, and I wanted to carve out a moment in one of the episodes to talk about.
This is your stage. Take your stage, buddy.
So, Chancellor Jen, friend of the show, Chancellor Jen, came in. She was skiing this weekend, so we decided to, I picked her up from the train station last night, and rather than go home and cook, we decided, hey, let's go out and have a meal because it's late. So we go to one of our favorite spots in the neighborhood, and we're chitting and chatting. And at one point, the waiter reminded me of an old colleague, and I was like, "Hey, you remind me of my friend Sean." And he's like, "Cool." We had a little, and then some time passes.
Sean, my brother Sean?
No, this other guy, Sean.
Right.
So he comes up and he's like, "I was embarrassed to say this before, but you actually remind me of someone." I said, "Oh, okay." And he says, "My girlfriend watches a podcast. And you look just like one of the guys." And I was like, "Oh, that's funny." Right? Clearly in my head canon, I had your response, and I was like, "Yeah,
absolutely not."
Yeah, exactly. So I just was like, "Oh, interesting." And Jen, of course, goes, "Yeah?" And the guy goes, "Yeah." He's like, now I was wearing a hat, and he goes, "Yeah, like salt and pepper hair." And you were like, "But the other guy has a beard." And I was like, "Oh." And Jen's like, And then, so I was like, "What's the podcast?" And he goes, I don't really remember. And Jen's like, he has a podcast. And I was like, and now I'm just feeling mortified, but I'm trying to tell myself in my head, like, hey, it's okay to have this conversation. Like, don't get embarrassed. Just like, relax, man.
It could be. Could be.
So I was like, I am on a very niche podcast about Star Trek. And he goes, "My girlfriend's family loves Star Trek." And Jen then goes, "It's him. It's him." And she but Keith, not effing with me. She is
she's convinced. She's fully convinced.
She's fully into the reality that of the tens of people who have ever seen the show, this guy's girlfriend not only watches it, but enough that he has indirectly seen on her computer screen.
I mean, statistically, it is unlikely there is somebody in the state that you are in that has seen the show.
So now I'm starting to sweat a little bit. I'm like, and I'm just like, get me out of this conversation. So he goes, "Well, let me go try to text her and see if I can find out." And I was like, "No, we don't have to do this. It's not." He was like, no, I have to find out. So he goes off.
Definitely have to find out.
And Jen's like, it's him. And I'm now having the conversation with Jen where I was like, "Jen, 11 people in total could possibly pick me out of a lineup for $1 million.
He comes back and it's like, "Oh, it's Joe Rogan. Are you Joe Rogan?"
So he comes back and he's like, "Oh, she couldn't come. I couldn't Google it. I couldn't blah, blah, blah." And Jen's like, "Hold on." And she takes on her phone and I'm like, No. So now he goes over into the booth and he's next to her and I'm just wanting to just crawl out of my body. And she finds a random episode and clicks it. And all I hear is, dun, 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 dun. And I was like, fast forward. She's like, no, it's only a minute. I was like, do not make this waiter sit through the intro.
At his place of work, trying to do his job.
And I was like, Jen, please. So she scrolls a little bit and freezes on Keith. And it's the one where I had COVID and I have a huge beard. And she freezes on a still screen of us like this. I mean, it is literally the worst photo of, and the guy's like, this is his exact response, right? As politely as possible, he goes, exactly what you're expecting. He goes, no. And somehow you could see the the bubble of like whatever fantasy Chancellor Jen was living in pop, and she then realized across the table, like, oh my God, this is really embarrassing. And I was like, well, you know, man, it was a long shot. So Jen goes, how could that possibly be? I was like, Jen, I'm a white guy with glasses talking
next
to another dude,
white guy with
another white dude with a beard. It's every podcast.
That's every podcast that has ever been podcasted.
No, yes. If someone says to me in the street, hey, you look like a podcaster, you could say that to any human being, and you have an 80% chance you hit a podcaster.
I mean, if you AI'd podcasts,
you
it would be two wordy white dudes with various shades of beard.
So the guy goes, to be fair, and he came over, and this was fun. He goes, to be fair, when I tried to Google to find the podcast, he's like, a picture of you guys popped up. To which then I had the general question, what did he type into Google?
Right?
To pull us up. And before I could ask that question, I was like, it's best I let this die. And Jen was like, we should ask him. I was like, it's best we let this die.
No.
So here's the big question, Keith. As we are then leaving, he hands me a check. He goes, write the name of your YouTube channel on the receipt. I want to subscribe. Would you have left the URL and the receipt or just went out with your dignity intact?
Oh, if we had dignity, we wouldn't be here.
You're right. So yes, I did leave the YouTube URL. So we'll see if we get one new subscriber, Keith. We know. And it turns out I checked.
I'm so sorry.
So he literally got that receipt, saw the tip, and he was like, yeah, no. So, oh man. That was the story of the night I almost got recognized, and Jen believed that I did.
Wow. I mean, you had a chance there, like, not to humiliate yourself. You just need to know when to stop it.
I had nothing to do with it.
Hey, look,
I just looked it up.
All right, so here, I just Googled this. So
he didn't know our names.
No, if you, and the only way you can do this accurately is to go into the private browser, because it's not like pulling from your your stuff, right? I typed in Deep Space Nine podcast.
He didn't know Deep Space Nine. All he knew was Star Trek.
Well, we're on the first page of Deep Space Nine podcast. So
1,000 people in the world are subscribed to this page. If this guy's girlfriend in Nowhere, Pennsylvania was one of them, I would have crapped.
It's pretty remarkable. We do not make the first page on Star Trek podcast.
No,
sadly. But
and especially if you Google one guy with beard, one guy with glasses, I don't think we're popping up, man.
I mean, like literally everyone in history.
It was a hoot. I'm still laughing about it. Jen just ran out of the shower to try to defend herself, and I wouldn't allow her.
Look, I'm on a page now, apparently called 70 Best Star Trek Podcasts. And let me tell you, I think I can pretty confidently say...
we're not on there?
We're not in the top 40. Let's find out.
Man.
No, we're down to
Google,
60. Only in the last 10.
Google top 10 podcasts that JD listens to. See if we made that one.
I think we're like 4 of those.
Oh, okay.
All right.
That was fun.
Let's. Oof. Wow. So sorry, everyone. So we just like. It's sort of like we're trying to like descend into narcissism, but we still
can't even do
dorky.
it. Yeah.
Like we can't even pull it off. All right. So what was Voyager doing?
Yeah.
A far more successful show. They were doing the episode Innocence, in which this is not going to make sense to you now, but it will eventually. My description of that is Tuvok is not a great babysitter for Benjamin Button. So, if you know, you know. The top headline in the weekly world news, more Dead Sea Scroll nonsense. Economic boom of 1996. I do believe we had a pretty good couple of years economically. Jesus Christ did not return to Earth unless it was, he was in a boy band because it was 1996. But yeah, that's
well, that Passion of the Christ movie was on its way, so maybe there was some truth to that.
Oh God, that was a that was a thing that happened.
What was his name? Cavill or somebody?
Not
Henry Cavill. This is pre-Cavill.
No, Caviezel, Jim Caviezel.
Yeah.
Who kind of he went crazy. He went QAnon. So okay. There you go. No surprises there. All right. Yep. So this episode was directed. I'm trying to keep us moving. This episode was directed by none other than LeVar Burton. Geordi himself is back, who last directed Bar Association just 2 episodes ago. So he did 2 episodes in 3. However, there was a month off between the 2, which made that possible. This episode was written with a teleplay by Ronald D. Moore and a story by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. This is both of their first episodes of Deep Space Nine, but they would both go on to be staff writers the following season and story editors for the rest of the series. Which means it is time for something trivial, Mike. Let's see if he scrubbed the button. Now, Keith, waste your time.
With what?
With trivial trivia.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
Oh no, what happened? We did good. Okay. We did it. All right. So, the illustrious actor Ron Canada. Did you recognize Ron Canada?
We've seen him once before in this role, right?
No.
Oh. I did recognize him, and I thought either it was just general recognition through the makeup or we'd seen him before, but...
Well, Ron Canada has done many, many, many things, including, if I steal the joke from the West Wing Weekly, it's Ron Canada. Do you know what I'm referencing? The Canadian national anthem, "O Canada"?
Yeah. Why are we stealing? Oh, you're stealing a joke from...
A joke from the West Wing Weekly, because he was on the West Wing as a recurring character. Anyway,
maybe
but
that's
he's not new.
From.
He's not new to Star Trek because he previously played Martin Benbeck on the Next Generation episode, The Masterpiece Society.
It's me! I'm Martin Benbeck!
Wow, there's some deep cuts there. If you're really excited about a failed musical that never got to Broadway, Mike and I are right there with those references. And he later would play Fezzik on the Voyager episode Juggernaut. In the original version of this story, it was Sisko, not Worf, who was on trial. Also, the Klingon ship, which had been destroyed, wasn't actually a ship at all, but a fake holographic projection. Also a good idea, but I think if you're going to use Klingons, you got to use Worf. I thought that was the greater decision, and it allowed Sisko to be Bobby Donnell Sisko. The origins of this episode are to be found indirectly in Ira Steven Bear's love for the films of Sam Peckinpah. In 1994, Bear read the new Peckinpah biography written by David Weddle, who worked on this show. He was so impressed with that book that he invited Weddle down to Paramount to have a look around. And while touring the Deep Space Nine sets, Weddle suggested that he pitch a show. And Bear was thrilled with the idea. Weddle then contacted his film school writing partner, Bradley Thompson, and asked him if he'd like to join in putting the show together. And so they then became a team working on Deep Space Nine for the whole rest of the time. So you never know. That book that wrote, that self-published book, I put out 10 years ago, maybe it'll get me on Star Trek someday. Who knows?
Well, I mean, they pitch a Captain Worf show on this episode, and I'm here for it. Where's that show? Let's do it.
Oh, we're gonna see a fair amount of Worf in captaining the Defiant. Don't you worry. This is not the last time we're gonna see that.
Well, it's easy to gig. What a commute. It's a pretty easy commute.
It's a pretty good commute. Yeah. Well, I captained the SS basement.
Yeah, but you sleep upstairs. Here. Worf's just walking. It's mere feet.
That's true. Well, give me time. I'm just going to lie down on the couch. I'm never going to leave. Yeah. I'm going to fuse myself to the couch. Yep. So according to Ronald D. Moore, this episode was written exclusively to slap Worf around. Sons of Moog had told him, "You're not as Klingon as you thought you were, and you're not going to go back to the Empire." But inside, Worf thought, "Well, I've got Starfleet. Now I wanted to put that into question, to shake up the character and really make him question who he was and what he wanted and where he belonged." So lots of interesting behind-the-scenes production writing stuff going on there. You want to know who else is interesting? Mike, it's our patrons. What are the chances our patron slide comes up?
Keith, it's probably a pretty good potential, but there's like no, that's not it. Okay, let's try that one. Yeah, okay, folks, our patrons, they fund this for some reason. We got Brian and Kimmel Beersock, Casey Clark, Jason Moe. Jason was able to make it to the watch along, even though it was like a very last minute. Him and JD made it along with Chancellor Jem, Joshua Cronin and Peter, Andrew Hayes, Jorge Navoa, and the mysterious household. Worf's big O boot shivs that are about to get bitch slapped around this episode. Charles Babbage, Harry Pothead, CRM, we love Chris. He's released some awesome new customs I saw on the Instagram. Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, glad you're doing well, my friend. Delusions at Noon.
Got COVID now.
Oh, Jesus. YouTube viewer, not Henry Kazivio, but the real Jesus. YouTube viewer, Jason Hubbard, JD Makes, Colin Dakin, Chris Mitchell, Pat, Josh, JD, Lutz, and Wyatt. You can join the team.
And Delusions at Noon. Hello.
Delusions at Noon, I didn't say?
No.
Oh, well.
you were calling my
it was a fever delusion.
Father Jesus for a second?
It was a fever delusion.
I don't know why Jesus came into it.
We think that he's not a part of this. We thank you guys for being a part of the show. You can check it out. Become part of the team. Patreon.com/K and M.
All right. I think it's time to talk about our guest stars, including the
Canada.
Keep going.
I don't know. And then what about the Vulcan with the cool haircut?
Deborah Strong as Talara. "Oh Canada, my home and native land. True patriot love in all our hearts command."
You might like hockey, Keith, but Canadian you are not. Although you guys are at war for the best maple syrup, you and the Vermontes.
We're not at war. We won. We won already. There's no conflict there. You can't. It's like being in conflict with like a bug. No. No. And yes, if I needed to do both anthems, like with a gun to my head, no problem. I got it covered.
Yeah, this is as bad as if your waiter at the restaurant asks you if you know the Canadian national anthem.
I'm ready.
Yeah, please.
I'm ready at a drop of a hat. Great. I can't do it in French, though. All right, shall we go into our screening room? God, we're a mess. Okay, boy. So as we begin rules of engagement, Worf is having himself a nightmare. A bunch of Klingons have killed everyone on the Defiant, including, which was a very interesting inclusion in his nightmare here, what I assume to be his son, Alexander.
Yeah, I saw some kids in there, yeah.
Although it was never referenced. You just had to sort of know and extrapolate what Alexander's age would be at this point. Interesting. He wakes up with a start in Deep Space Nine's holding cell, and Odo says, "Your hearing starts today." Oh, snap. The teaser is less than a minute long.
That's the way I like it, baby. Just give it brief, give it quick.
I mean, and I'm in. Like, I'm already like, all right, great. Tell me how you got here. That sounds fun. So, in Act 1, a hearing is rung in. A Vulcan admiral announces that the Klingon Empire is trying to extradite Worf on the charge of murder. The Klingon warrior explains the situation. Worf, in command of the Defiant, apparently fired on a Klingon civilian ship, killing 441 passengers. Yikes. And the charge is criminal negligence because of his lust for combat. And I would assume 441 counts of murder. So that's not great. We find Sisko is there to represent Worf.
I mean, how many jobs has this guy got? Sisko Does he ever get a break? He's the defense counsel. He's the captain.
He's the emissary.
Yeah, he's like stocking janitorial supplies in his offices. And him and Cassidy are like have a branding side gig. It's a lot.
Yeah, well, hey, look, there's no JAG officer on Deep Space Nine, but that's also true in Measure of a Man on Next Gen.
Or he's a stodge in the kitchen. I mean, he's learning how to do forks. He's buffing up from the forks.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, but I get it from a production standpoint because you want your heroes to be doing the action. But like, yeah, you would imagine that on this giant station there would be a lawyer of some sort of a JAG officer. But that's not what we did here, and it's better for it because Sisko gets to be Siskoing. So he points out that at the time, the Defiant was under attack by 2 other Klingon warships, so it was a combat situation. The civilian ship decloaked right in front of the Defiant in the middle of the battle, and Worf thought it was just another warship. According to Sisko, it was a tragic but unavoidable accident. And so here we set up what the case is going to be. Great. It's a great start here. We set up the excitement, and then we outline the facts of the case right here. So
and actually, I love the setup so far because there is a wrinkle here. It's not just straight up did he do it or not. It's all about his state of mind, and that state of mind determining the jurisdiction of the case. I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and to have and all of this in the greater context of the conflict between the Federation and the Klingons and their uneasy alliance, it all makes sense in the greater picture as well as being a self-contained legal drama.
And they all have got, and of course we got to bring in a Vulcan to be the sort of mediary because that's what the Vulcans do. Every time we've seen a court case, there's some sort of a Vulcan at the head.
Oh yes, and we're still in the like pre-Enterprise era where the Vulcans are like the good guys and not snotty dicks, which they become for the rest of Star Trek. So, after the hearing, Sisko and Odo sets Odo to the task of finding out everything about the commander of the civilian ship. He's going to argue that the ship was actually joining the battle. So go dig up dirt on this guy. And if it was joining the battle, he was a legitimate military target. So the Klingon lawyer comes up and gives Sisko the witnesses and pretty bluntly states the Klingons' objectives. We're going to embarrass the Federation while you're repairing your reputation. And we're going to take advantage of that and take some opportunities to annex more Cardassian space, which is interesting that this is exactly what we're doing. And I like it. I like that it's so direct and straight there. So go ahead.
I don't like it.
You don't like it? Why don't you like it?
I like the idea of it, but the execution later in the episode, the way that the denouement takes place, I feel like it undermines, in my opinion, the kind of cool twisty twist at the end. Because the motives, the bad guy, quote unquote bad guy motives are expressed here. I think those being revealed later, the political sort of underpinnings is more effective, but we can talk about that later.
Right, so that if we maintained the idea that it was not politically motivated.
Yeah, then that twist at the end comes with more, it has more bite.
It would. And I think I agree with you. I think it would be stronger if it were that way. I think, to play devil's advocate, I think if we didn't express this right away, I'm not sure. I think we would be questioning, why did the Klingons care this whole time?
441 people died.
Yeah, but it's not like that's battle. That is honor. That's whatever. Like it's.
Come on, give your husband a kiss. Come on. Have a good shift.
She's like, pass. Hard pass.
I told her that. I told him that. Yeah, but then it sort of undercuts the little scene they have later where he's like, look, I'm here as a lawyer. I'm here for the thrill of battle. Like, I don't care what happens. Just that. Well, I guess that's more of a tete-a-tete between them than that mid-scene. Well, okay. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
The idea's in the right place, but I just feel like It doesn't.
Yeah, it takes some of the suspense out of the motivations, but I think it also allows us to focus on the case as opposed to wondering what they're up to. But
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
So here's the scene as it goes there. He says, Worf is about to present us with something we never could have won in battle. Sympathy. Any move we make against you will be seen as a legitimate response to an outrageous slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
Sisko says, you're presuming an awful lot. Worf maintains his innocence. And you are about to remind me that the burden of proof is mine, the Klingon says. It's an interesting system of justice you have, Captain. It does have its flaws, however. It emphasizes procedure over substance, form over fact. I'm sorry if you feel like that puts you at a disadvantage. On the contrary, I look forward to fighting on your terms. This is not a fight, it's a search for the truth. And this is kind of the fun part about this. The truth must be won. I'll see you in the battlefield. And so that is what Ch'pak is all about there. So this is, of course, 100% a crossover with The Practice. Trivial K&M trivia. The Practice would premiere almost exactly a year after this episode aired. There it is.
Let's see if we can find a fan to point out. Fan?
So the trial begins with a surprise. With Ch'pak begins by accepting all of the facts in the case, including the sensor data and the story as stated by Worf in the report. He says this is about what was in Worf's heart when he gave the order to fire. Was he a Klingon warrior caught up in bloodlust? If so, only the Klingons can judge him. And Sisko says we can't put a man's heart on trial. It's a subjective issue that cannot be reasoned in the court of law. I ask the advocate to be limited into arguing the evidence of the case. But Ch'pak says, someone told me this was a search for truth. Should we not follow that search wherever it takes us? And of course, the judge is like, hey, motive is relevant, which it is in our legal system.
Solid.
It's all good court drama. So they call the first witness, Dax, as an expert in the Klingon culture. Ch'pak tries to get her to say that Worf's predatory instinct took over, but Dax says, I've seen him restrain himself in the holosuite.
Mm-hmm.
And we see we see a flashback of them fighting, and Dax makes it very clear she doesn't want him to hold back. Then we begin the device of having Dax do testimonies in the flashback direct to camera, which we will see throughout here, doing what I would call a soft break of the fourth wall, because you're not actually breaking the fourth wall, but we are. Go ahead.
So in real time, Keith,
Mm-hmm.
This took me way by surprise. And so my main question was, right? This is before I had done any research. My main question became, was this decided, was this premeditated? Because it is a device we have not even begun to explore in 4 seasons of the show. Never even came close to it. So is it something that was premeditated because that's so out there? Or was it a directorial choice? We've got Geordi, who's kind of maybe wanting to take a big swing. Perhaps he felt that just courtroom drama, because if you think about it, in a show, and you're trying, we know that they have viewers that they want to keep interested. If you're not going to be able to show any action because we're not doing flashbacks, it's just going to be courtroom drama. You need to find a way to spice up the episode. Maybe this gives them an in to using flashbacks. I'm meditating all of these things. Then I forgot, internet. So I looked up I looked up the actual screenplay for this episode. I was able to get the teleplay. And a quick Google and a little bit of a search shows me this exact scene, Dax's voice. I've made it very clear to Worf that I never want him to take easy on me because I'm a woman or a trill. And then we see, this is in the stage notes. Flashback. Dax sweeps Worf's feet from under him and he crashes to the cave floor. Dax tries to go in for the kill, yada, 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 yada. Or I had it called up and then...
Well, to just give it away, yes, it very much was pre-planned in the script.
Yes. Oh, here it is. Dax then turns to camera and breaks the fourth wall between her and the wardrobe. So it is right in the script, direct break of the fourth wall.
Yep. Yeah, which then, I would not consider that a full break, because
they're not talking to the audience.
To the audience.
They're talking to the courtroom.
We are revealing that this is her retelling of the flashback, which, and of course, any retelling of a flashback is subjective in some fashion, but this is clearly her testimony that we are dramatizing.
Well, if we're using practice logic, Keith, it is in full color, the flashback, which makes it the actual truth. Whereas whenever it's black and white, it's subjective truth.
Or weird shaky slow-mo that they
grainy.
didn't actually film slow-mo. They just cut the frame rate. Yeah. Anyway, so next, Chapak says, "We hacked your Dropbox." And Cisco says, Worf's Dropbox. Now, Cisco says, "You can't do that without a warrant," and the judge shuts it down. So Chapak asks Worf if it's okay to enter into evidence, or do you have something to hide? And of course, Worf takes the bait like an idiot. Bobby Donna would not have allowed that to happen, I'll tell you that.
It's in the treehouse.
But we found in his Dropbox was a holodeck program of a brutal Klingon battle that ends in the slaughter of an entire city, including all civilians, women, and children. And when cosplaying, he does give the order to kill everyone. Which, of course, insert holodeck ethics discussion.
Or video games. I mean, ostensibly it's VR, right? What does Mike do in Grand Theft Auto? He don't want that publicized. Don't bring that up in trial, or I might be in trouble.
Well, but that's the. But you could also argue that is the point of Grand Theft Auto, and whether or not but it's about a lot of things, and I think what is. If something is simulated and virtual, is there a thing that you can do in a simulated virtual world which is wrong or bad? Or does the fact that it is simulated and virtual therefore negate any ethical discussions? I don't know. But
Well, there was a very great episode of The Practice where this old man is accused of murdering his wife. And then they look at his journals. In his journals, he fantasizes about killing his wife all the time. But just because you write it in your journal don't mean that I don't know that that's direct evidence in any way.
Yeah, well, there you go. Freedom of thought. And the question is, we have freedom of thought and we have freedom to write whatever we want. At what point does it cross into action? I don't know.
But here we're just trying to determine, was he in the rage of battle mode? And if he did this video game simulation directly before he went out on this mission, well, depends on a lot of stuff.
And that's the point. So this is where I can't wait to go to Holodecks Ethics 201.
Well, it is a comment. There is some nice commentary on the U.S. criminal justice system, because all of that said, murder trials, at the end of the day, if there is a lack of all physical evidence and it comes down to a lot of just circumstantial evidence, you're actually at more of a disadvantage as a defendant than you would think you should be. Because at that point, when everything becomes circumstantial, 12 people can make any friggin' decision they want.
And it becomes about storytelling. Who's the best storyteller, as opposed to, if there are no facts to really to battle there. Interesting. But as you point out, he played it the night before they went on the mission. So in Act 2, next on the witness chair is Cisco himself. He tells the story of giving Worf the mission. He'll be guarding ships taking medical supplies to a Cardassian planet. They're expecting Klingons to start some shiz. So Cisco says, "You're in command of the Defiant. Go out there and protect them." And Cisco testifies direct to camera in the flashback, explaining that Worf was ready to take on the responsibility and captain the ship. Next up is a hilarious beat with Quark,
Mike is way behind here.
Go back into those two screenshots. Avery Brooks is going to come and slap you for those. Go back one more.
Well, Avery Brooks is I said this in the watch along. Avery Brooks's take to camera was very much, I know it's not really, but if you rewatch it, it seems that he is indicating what he thinks about that choice of storytelling. I don't think he loves it.
I feel like we're going to disagree on whether or not.
I have some good evidence, so I can't wait to talk about it.
Because I think it's fantastic.
Oh, I think it's absolutely terrible.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll have to have our own separate trial about whether the soft brakes are good or not.
I have a great witness to call. So.
Okay. Well, hey, if I weren't a musical theater writer, I definitely would have been a trial lawyer. So, let's get it. All right. But first, we have to talk about Quark, who, of course,
the fact that they were like this Bajoran's name is Clitoria. Come on. I mean, straight up.
Wait, is that actually her name?
If it's not Clitoria, it's damn close.
I think you just made that up.
No. No, I didn't.
All right, hold on.
It's very close to Clitoria. I might have to pull the episode up.
I'm doing it right now.
It's very. I have to grab some real quick.
So
This
is going to be like a great indictment of Mike if this is wrong. All right, so Mike is getting a sandwich. All right, so Bashir, Sisko, Hello Sweet Caves. All right, so it's coming up. Order Quarks. Okay. Oh my God, this is fantastic.
Okay.
All right. So let's keep in mind. Let's submit to evidence that Mike's supposition was that the name.
The joke was a battle around. It was close.
The Dabo woman. One of them was named Clitoria. Was Mike's
If it
suggestion.
wasn't, it's a joke missed.
Here are the names.
Okay.
Etheria, Glydia, Midia, and Ralidia.
Okay, so
none of them were Clitoria.
The second one sounds like it could have been Chlamydia. Chlamydia. There's the joke. We're battling around. It's very. Oh, that all was very onomatopoeial comedy.
Yeah, I did not hear that word.
Okay.
There.
Clitoria would have been funny though. Come on.
It would have been.
The one weird comedic beat is this scene. I guess they felt like they had to do it, but
I thought it was really funny.
Okay.
Oh, dude, I don't know. That's we're gonna be a problem. So he tells the story of Bashir hitting on
the Morn
various
funny,
Dabo ladies.
Then
he remembers it was Morn who almost speaks, but of course he doesn't. He does testify that he sees Worf come in and is in an unusually good mood. He, of course, drinks prune juice, and Worf was excited about being able to command the Defiant. And when Quark asks him, what if the Klingons attack? Worf goes, I hope the Klingons attack. And Sisko gives Worf some very solid side eye in the courtroom. In Act 3, Odo reports to Sisko about the civilian ship's captain. He does not have a reputation for aggression, and that it would have only taken a slight error in navigation for it to end up in the firefight, because they were in the shipping lanes. Sisko asks why would the ship decloak right in front of the Defiant? And I, Keith, would ask, why does the civilian ship have a cloak? Because I don't think we've ever seen that, and cloaks are pretty advanced military technology. I don't think just any old ship's going to have a cloak. Don't know. It's weird that they never addressed that. So Odo says everyone was eager to talk to him, and that makes him suspicious. Now, I know that some of we dealt with like Quark having a cloaking device once, and this other thing, but it was like a big deal to have a cloaking device. The Federation didn't have one until the Defiant.
I would think that that's a solid, like, put it on the list for wormholes. That you bring up a really solid point there.
So Sisko says, look into anyone who might have commandeered the ship. Then O'Brien testifies, who was running tactical on the Defiant during the attack. He describes the battle, which we see in flashback. The Klingons kept switching off, trying to draw them off the Cardassians, and they kept cloaking and uncloaking during the battle. Worf eventually recognizes a pattern, and he gets them ready to fire. As soon as something is about to decloak in front of them, they fire, and of course, it's the civilian ship. O'Brien says he stands by Worf's decision, but Ch'pak does a good job of making it clear that O'Brien may have made a different decision. And we learn in this that O'Brien has been in Starfleet for 22 years and has been in 235 separate combat situations. Here's the thing about the 22-year part that I thought about when this happened. When I was 16, 22 years felt like an impossible amount of time to be doing something. And at 43, I'm like, yeah, totally, I get that. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, I've been in New York for 22 years. I've worked at my current job for 13 now, and like it could easily turn into 22 and I wouldn't even notice.
It's such a psychological manifestation of the very real physical idea of as farther you get into space, the faster time goes. You know, the interstellar idea. Because think about it, when you're like 8-9 years old, you can kind of comprehend turning 21, but like turning 30, turning 40, right. It's radically implausible. Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. So we play out the hypothetical of what O'Brien might have
Keith,
done.
At this moment, I have to share, is for our own levity's sake, a couple of things that I was recognizing in time. This guy was reminding me of another character. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was like, and this is where Mike's brain went. It's not one-to-one, but...
We know where Mike's brain went.
I couldn't get out of my head. And
this of course... But do you remember what the character's name is? I think it's Chavagina, right? Is that his name?
And all I could think of, as mayor of the Munchkin City... And I was like, oh, he kind of looks like that. But then I was like, something's missing. And I was like, oh, let's fix it. There it is. He needs this Klingon was reminding me of the mayor of Munchkin City with crazy evil eyebrows. Am I wrong?
What is going on over there? You had that all queued up? You photoshopped something? I have no idea what you're talking about.
He reminds me of the mayor of Munchkin City. I don't know why. He just does.
Well, poor Chagina. All right.
Not only that, but Keith, friend of the show, JD, did me a solid. Because at this moment, I'm recognizing that this is an episode ostensibly about Worf, but Worf has said like one word. We keep cutting to him, and he never says anything. And you're like, what's Worf doing? And he's just kind of broody and whatnot. And I'm like, oh my God, we had Emo Odo. And so I asked JD, and he delivered. I present to you
God.
Emo Worf.
Emo Worf! Oh, JD, you know, that's the bad part. By the time we get to season 7, we're going to need the emo whole cast.
Oh, man, I can't wait. Yeah, just like in a band. Like in a Nine Inch Nail. On a Nine Inch Nail.
They're like...
So we'll keep him up for the rest of the ep.
Wow, that's amazing. Whew, that's gonna get pulled out of context. All right, so anyway, Ch'pak says, did you get to O'Brien in the hypothetical? Would you give the order to fire? O'Brien says, this isn't a fair question. It didn't really happen this way. I wasn't in command. Now, I'm not interested in whether you think it's a fair question or not. You're in command. There's a ship decloaking. You don't know what it is. Do you fire? O'Brien says, no. Uh-oh. Later, in the Replomat, Ch'pak sits down with Sisko. He's putting Worf on the stand, which legal nerds will know is usually a move of desperation. You should not be testifying in your own trial. That means you're in trouble. So Ch'pak advises him to concede. I'll make sure that Worf isn't executed, and I'll even represent him myself in the Klingon trial. Sisko says, don't eat your cake before it's hatched, and I know you're worried about what Worf will say on the stand. Which takes us into Act 4. Worf and Sisko are going back to the hearing room, and Odo comes up with bad news. He still hasn't found anything. Then Worf testifies in flashback. He says the attack came out of nowhere, and they were immediately under fire. Worf confirms that he was indeed excited for battle, but he was still professional. But he knew that a civilian ship getting involved was unlikely, and he so then chose not to hesitate to fire if that happened. Sisko says, Mr. Worf, I want you to think about the civilians who died on that transport ship and answer one question. Under the same set of circumstances, would you do it again? And Worf says, yes. If I had hesitated, it would have been negligent. I would have been risking my ship, my crew, and the entire convoy. Which I think is not unreasonable position. But, so Ch'pak then asks Worf about his relationship with the Klingons, including the fact that he is being punished for acting on his conscience and siding with the Federation versus the Klingons. Worf admits that he's angry. And Ch'pak says, of course you are. Who wouldn't be? What happened affected your entire family. The House of Moog was brought down. Your brother was ejected from the High Council in disgrace.
And now he thinks he's a janitor from New Jersey.
Now he thinks he's a janitor. Your lands were seized, and now your son Alexander has to bear the stigma of being the son of a traitor and the most annoying character on Next Gen. Did I miss anything? No. In your opinion, what did they think of you on the Empire, Worf? I'm hated. Why? Because of what you did. Yes. Are you sure it's not something more basic? What is that supposed to mean? Isn't it obvious? You were raised by humans on Earth, and now you wear their uniform. Haven't you really always been a traitor in your heart? Worf says no, but Worf says he would never attack a defenseless opponent. And then Ch'pak turns it around on him. Maybe I've been wrong about you. Maybe you aren't really Klingon in your heart. A true Klingon rejoices at the death of his enemies, old, young, armed, unarmed. All that matters is the victory. Tell me, Worf, did you weep for those children? I grieve for them. Grieve for them? A Klingon doesn't grieve. They died in glorious battle. They are honored, dead in Tovakor. They do not want your grief. You dishonor their memories. Boom. And of course, Ch'pak is provoking Worf, who gets him to challenge him to battle with swords. He then says Worf wanted to prove himself in the battle with other Klingons. Then he brings up Alexander, and that is the final straw, and Worf punches him right out into the court. Ch'pak says, I thought you'd never attack an unarmed man. This was some Bobby Donnaling right here. This is Plan B.
That's Bobby
totally
Rambo,
Plan
baby.
Beat him.
Plan beat him.
Bobby McRambo. Perhaps you should have said, not unless I get angry, not unless I have something to prove. I rest my case. Well done, Ch'pak. There you go. So in Act 5, the hearing is in recess. The judge is deliberating, and Sisko waits in his office with his cool ship models when Odo comes in with good news for the first time. He's got new evidence. He asks Ch'pak to take the stand. He does so willingly when Sisko challenges his manhood. Of course. A lot of dick measuring in this episode. Sisko lays the groundwork of the Klingons' shaky relationship.
Wait, what's
with
that,
the
Keith?
Federation.
Hold on just a second. I think we've got to go to the tape from...
Great, I knew this was coming.
From just a night ago, from a couple days ago on Geekly.
Yesterday.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and pull this up.
No, take your time. Take your time.
Yep, I don't have the video pulled up, but I do have the audio. So let's go ahead and go to the tape.
Okay, great. Yeah. Very substantial.
No, it's 6 inches.
That's bigger than mine.
Well, there you have it, Keith.
Well, yeah. Well, there it is. Well, yeah, you have to find out, ladies. Prepare to be disappointed.
Keith, they're gonna make the same exact response that waiter did. No, that's not it.
It's not what I was looking for. I thought I clicked on something else. Wow, yikes. Where the hell are we?
Did you say good night? Yeah. No, I said swipe right.
I don't know. I don't
know. The apps, I don't know. Do you know the apps?
Well, here's the thing.
Are you on the apps, Keith?
No, I'm still not, like I'm working up my courage to get on the apps, but because I was married for a long time, I don't know whether you swipe right or left, which one is the good one.
Right is good, I think. I couldn't tell you.
It's gonna happen. I'm gonna figure it out. Like Grandpa's gonna get on his jitterbug.
That would be a good Geekly if we just look at if we look at your profile and we see what we think. Or does that sound maybe horrifying?
That sounds terrible.
Keith,
who would want that?
Keith, stop talking about yourself. Let's focus on the episode. Jeez. Megalomaniac.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, Odo does have some new evidence. He asked... Oh, yes, we did this. Mm-hmm. So, Sisko asks if the Klingons would ever try to deceive the Federation. And
Keith,
shows...
Hold on. Time out.
I'm never going to finish this.
Keith, I need you to go on a journey right now. Because I think... Spoiler for the... we're going asynchronously here. The best part of this episode is right now. So we need a bumper. And you know what bumper I'm talking about. Because what is Mr. Sisko here giving that is just serving? We need a crossover, baby. We need a crossover back to Out of Practice podcast. First of all, patrons, non-patrons alike, the entirety of the Out of Practice podcast, 8 full seasons of us podcasting, our first podcast, every episode would end with the final speech that the attorneys give.
Oh, this is definitely going to be worth it. And by that, I mean not worth it.
It's closing time. Time to put your case to bed. It's closing time. Otherwise, your client's dead. Closing time.
Okay, there we go.
Nailed it. Oh, okay.
Good Lord.
All right. So Ben's talking.
So
and he's chewing the scenery, too.
Sisko asks if the Klingons would ever try to deceive the Federation. He shows Ch'pak the names of the victims of the attack. And they're all just a random assortment of folks. But they're also the exact same group of people who all crashed in a ship just a few weeks ago. This is a very unlucky group of people, wouldn't you say? And of course, it's a fake! Mike will understand that later. The whole thing was staged to frame Worf and pull the Federation out of the Cardassian territory. This is, of course, game over. So later in Worf's cabin, he's able to get Ch'pak to confess to the fact that they faked this whole thing. So later in Worf's cabin, Sisko comes in and invites him to a party celebrating his exoneration. But Worf is still troubled. I did have something to prove when I took command of the convoy, and I did not realize until I stood there looking at him, blood trickling from his mouth. In that moment, I remember thinking, finally, he had given me what I really wanted, a reason to attack him. And I had that same feeling when the Klingon ships first attacked. Finally, a chance for vengeance. I should not have accepted the mission. And Sisko said, I'm glad you realized that. That was your first mistake. What was your second? When the ship decloaked, I should have checked the target before I fired. You're damned right you should have checked. You knew there were civilian ships in the area. You fired at something you hadn't identified. You made a military decision to protect your ship and crew, but you're a Starfleet officer, Worf. We don't put civilians at risk or even potentially at risk to save ourselves. There are some folks in the world who could stand to listen to that. Sometimes that means we lose the battle and sometimes our lives. But if you can't make that choice, then you can't wear that uniform. And Sisko is doing filthy good Siskoing there. But he says, you're still going to make a hell of a captain. And that means even though he doesn't want to go to the party, you have to, because the party is not for you. Whew, that is some amazing Siskoing in that scene. I think it's time for us to adjudicate. Go on to the jury and adjudicate this episode, Mike.
AlamarEmmys, count to 4.
Okay. So, let us discuss whether there were any wormholes in the plot, Mike.
Well, we talked about the one, right, buddy? We talked about the wormhole that you mentioned that I've forgotten. Oh, yes.
The cloaking device.
The cloaking device. I also think there was, I wrote a note and then I threw that note away. As so Mike thing to do, but there was an objection. There was a part in the testimony that myself as well as the patrons in the watch along agreed there should have been an objection, and there was not an objection, and I can't remember what it was.
Well, there was a bunch there.
Yeah.
I mean, like this comes down to like TV court.
Yeah.
Right, looks nothing like actual court because the rules of evidence, the rules of how you can speak, like they just toss those out the window for TV.
But outside of those two things, I mean, I guess there's another thing I'm going to put in wormhole world, even though it's not quite. I think it could have been made clear. It's left ambiguously, possibly on purpose. But the question becomes, this false flag operation on the Klingons' part, was it premeditated from the get, or was it opportunistic in that once the transport vessel and all those people died, they were like, oh, we can use this because it only happened a day later? Or do you think that I don't think they went and killed all those people.
No, I think it was a couple of weeks later, actually. But no, I think that they had planned to pull something like this, and then they like, oh, we need to find a group of people we can kill off. Or like, oh, we've got this thing they just crashed. Like, what a great, we can use that. I don't think they killed him, but I do think it was very much premeditated.
Okay, so not opportune, but so sort of both is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I think their larger objective to get the Federation to pull out so they can annex more territory, I think that had been running for a long time. How do we do it? Well, we've got Worf there. Here's how we can frame Worf, because we need to find a vulnerability within the Federation to get them to do something wrong. How do we do that? Well, we get them to blow up a ship. We need a whole bunch of victims. Well, let's look at the crashed ships over the last 6 months and see if we can find a way to pull that off.
All right. Outside of that, those kind of things, I don't have any specific wormholes. No.
Yeah. No. And for me, I think that all tracks. Like it all. I mean, the cloak of it all is a little bit confusing, and the fact that nobody would have brought that up, and I think there could have been more discussion as to the plausibility. So let's say it was a civilian ship that accidentally ended up there and decloaked. Like, the implausibility of that happening is something I would have focused on more.
Well, here's the thing, really. I think the reason we don't talk about that is because it almost removes any question as to whether Worf... I mean, I think ultimately this is about Worf making a decision, right? A captain decision. And if you make too big a deal about a civilian ship would never have a cloak, or if it did, it would be really conspicuous, then it easily verifies Worf's decision, and there's no ambiguity, and there's no reason we're even here. So
no, for sure. Like it is one of those things that like, I think it would. So
is it really about Worf, or is it about the Klingons trying to pull one over on us? Is it about? That's kind of where I'm going with. Where we're going to get to is like, I get what the episode is about, but I don't know what it's. I get what the episode is trying to do, but I don't know what it's about. And that's what we're about to get to. So let's get to our best moments.
Let's do our best moments first.
I think Sisko does the best Bobby Donnell close here. It's just a great close. Yes, he does some great Siskoing at the end. Sort of the last third, Sisko does some great stuff. Like, he's able to not only win the case, he gets that great moment, like I call it the My Cousin Vinny moment, right? You know when Marissa Tomei, like, lets him know in that little note that she's got the best evidence, and then they have that dialogue and they're able to expose the whole thing. They get the same thing here. Odo gives him the freaking little note that's like, I got him. And then Ben just gets to luxuriate in that exposition, or in exposing that.
Because he's holding all the cards.
Yeah, and then he gets to go and like flip it and be a great captain and make it a learning experience. So that is the best moment for me. It's the Sisko of it all.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, for me, I think that final scene about, the mistakes that Worf made, and I think the tag about you have to go to the party. because that's part of what leadership is, even though you're not in the mood for it. I think that's just really excellent writing. And I think it really speaks to Sisko's leadership and his understanding. Like like he's both setting a hard boundary, setting a hard line, but also like there's a lot of compassion there. And I think it's just really terrific. I think it's a fantastic final scene of the episode. So that's what it is for me. Let us, I think, get into a hell of a fight over. He's taking notes.
You get some stambles. Hell yeah, they are self-sealing. Here are some stambles for you.
Is that you?
Yep.
Okay.
Because I turned down the loop back so you could hear your little bumper.
All right, so here's how I want to do this, Keith. Let's go real trials, and I'm going to give you my thoughts.
Okay.
We'll go to you then, and then I would like to reserve the final word as the defendant.
Okay. You're the defendant?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
I just have a lot to say. So first, here's the thing. My issue is actually not with the structural choice. I actually am on board with take a big swing, right? The issue I have with it, and I want to, my feelings about this all took place before I did some reading. So I want to make sure that I make it clear that I'm only going to back up the things I'm thinking. Originally, this is how I felt before I knew anything about it. So I like the choice. The issue is that it's so.
You talking about the fourth wall thing?
Yes, yes, that device. It's just so noticeable that it's hard. It would be better if you do something that bold or different, it's clearly going to be noticed, right? And so you should use it to augment the storytelling or to bring something to the storytelling, right? It should be. Instead, it reads like, because ultimately we learn nothing from it, and nothing in the beginning before they even start it, nothing is disputed by the guy. And so when we're watching these flashbacks, maybe we're supposed to be looking for inconsistencies or doing some investigation, but it ultimately there's nothing there to be found except for that one comedic beat. And thus it becomes just about, well, clearly the reason they did it was because we want to try something different or model after, it turns out, according to the people, that we're modeling it after a TV show we liked or this book we liked or whatever. And so it's a little toothless, right? It doesn't really, aside from being interesting visually, and new, it does not add anything, okay? Except for maybe let's just bring a little action to the episode. Let's get to the Worf of it, or the Klingon of it all. As I said, the false flag operation that is unearthed is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool thing because we know we're having a big Klingon issue with the Klingons currently, and this is their way of trying to take a shot, and it's a cool way to do it. Unfortunately, it's unclear to me where Worf really comes down in the whole thing. Like, he either did fuck up, and Ben calls him on it, but then again, like you said, with the beam and he didn't fuck up, right? But ultimately, he might have. He could have actually killed a bunch of people.
For sure.
And Ben literally says in the denouement here, no harm, no foul. He says the words, no harm, no foul. He's like, because, no, you kind of off the hook here. And that feels a little toothless. I would say that in the Worf of it all, that Worf has the recognition here is a step forward. So that is positive. Worf recognizes that I did feel those way. And like a lot of what that guy was saying, even though it was under the umbrella of BS, was true. Like, he got me. And that's interesting. And he realizes also he was able to be goaded, which is interesting. There's some interesting stuff.
Okay.
But as far as the episode goes, I understand that's what we're doing, but I don't feel it was done well. I found the performances to be pretty good. I felt like they gave away the motives of the Klingons way too early. And I really am bugged by, and this is a trope, all of the true hero of this episode is Odo. Odo's Perry Masoning takes place completely off camera. the whole episode hinges on it, and he just is like hands him a slip of paper on a Kindle Plus, you know? What are we saying? Well, I don't know what we're saying. It feels like, hey, we want to try this. We want to do a trial episode, and we want to use this cool framing device. That's kind of what they do. They're able to maybe save it a little bit at the end with the close and with the Ben, like the more you know, with violins playing, a Full House ending at the end with Worf. But ultimately, it just left me feeling like a big swing, loose contact on the ball.
Okay. All right.
Stem bolts.
Well, you have to hear my closing first.
Go for it.
All right. So, all right. So I will stipulate to a couple of things off the top. One, they definitely could have mined a lot more out of the soft breaks than they did. Mm-hmm. Right? But I do not agree that it had nothing to say. Right? I think the Quark beat is where we realize that these are all recollections. And, you know, by showing him as an unreliable narrator, we are reinforcing the idea that these are everybody's perspectives on things.
Okay.
Whether it's O'Brien's, and they talk about, like, you know, O'Brien is like, well, I wasn't in the chair, right? You know, that how the scene looks when you're in the chair is very different from when you're in that chair. And I think that is kind of what they were doing there. And the same thing with Dax. Like, well, I was pretty sure he wasn't going to kill me. Well, you don't know, because you're in your point of view and somebody else's. And so I do think that, yes, part of it was like doing something flashy and stylish to do that, but that's something we've done many times on Star Trek before. We'll do like a film noir thing, we'll do a horror thing. We sort of lean into these tropes a little bit, and I didn't find it jarring at all. I found it interesting. So I don't think we learned nothing from it. Mm-hmm. I think they could have done more with it, but I definitely don't think they learned nothing from it. I will also stipulate that the Deus Ex Machina of Odo finding this at the end was a little bit too convenient and a little bit unsatisfying to happen off the screen. But because the question of what is the episode about, the episode is about Worf's state of mind. The trial is about Worf's state of mind, and that's sort of why they stipulate to the facts of what happened, because the trial is about what's going on in Worf's head. Is Worf actually angry at the Klingons? Is he actually is that sense of betrayal that he has actually influencing the decisions that he's making militarily? And I think that's where the relevance of the episode happens, right? And you know, there are military conflicts happening right now, and civilians dying right and left right now, perhaps because the decision-making of the military power is being influenced by their emotional anger at the other side, therefore not making careful judgments as it relates to civilians and or actively trying to do it. And so I think the state of mind of the military person in that situation is what this is about. And Sisko's pointing out, you're the one with the gun. So you have a higher responsibility than just the military decision, because civilians are always a part of war. And so as the person with the gun, you have to be willing to risk your own safety to be very sure you are not killing civilians. That's what the Geneva Conventions are all about. This is what we all decided not to do after World War II. And, you know, people ignore right and left, but that is how we adjudicate things, right? We now will have trials for war crimes or such about making that decision, making sure that your responsibility in conflict to not harm civilians is higher than your responsibility to protect yourself or the people with you. It's also the same debate we see with policing in this country, and that as you are the one with the gun, you are taking, you have a higher burden of risk not to harm innocent people when you go into this thing. And if you go in compromised emotionally, like Worf was, that's kind of the whole ball game, and that is what needs to be addressed and weeded out. And that's why Sisko's speech at the end is so important. It's not just tossed off. That is kind of what Worf is going through.
Right, but I would have to object that it is possible. I'm not saying that responsibility isn't important, but it is possible to both be angry and also make a responsible decision. Those things are not mutually exclusive.
No, of course not. Of course not. It's being angry and letting that change the decision making that you are doing. Of course. No, absolutely. And I think Worf admits that
at the very end of the episode, right?
At the very end, he admits that it did.
So the only real commentary from the protagonist or the person at the center of this debate that is talking about what you are saying is the thesis of this whole episode doesn't take place until the last 10 seconds of the episode.
Well, because we have to lay the groundwork. Like Worf,
the groundwork is the entire 42 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
100%. Yeah, right. I think it is, and that all of the other machinations, right, are that's what really is the larger scale stakes of this. And it almost doesn't matter what Worf was thinking in the geopolitical elements of it, even though they made the case about it doesn't really matter, right? It's about the Klingons and the Federation and that conflict. But in our personal journeys here, in Worf's journey to become a captain, to become a leader, it matters very much. And so it's how, these smaller things get wrapped up in these bigger, like with the policing stuff, and you have these shootings, right? And like what happens in the specific person's mind in those specific moments are very important, but also it's wrapped up in these much larger issues, these much larger geopolitical issues or stuff in the country. So it's a big piece of that. My question in this, and it might be more of a wormhole, is actually about the Klingons' plan here. Because this false flag, fake thing, framing somebody for whatever, that is much more of a Romulan move than it is a Klingon move. But as we're finding out through Deep Space Nine, the Klingons are more Romulan-ish than they like to pretend. Like to pretend we're all honor and we're all straightforward. To have this weird sort of like subterfuge thing happening, like that's it's interesting. It's interesting that the Klingons would stoop to this in this situation, and it speaks to the weakness of their leadership, that this is how they would try to take over territory, because that's not how Klingons sell themselves. So anyway, I think there's more going on than you're giving credit to, and I think that I think the soft breaks add to it. I don't think it's just a seasoning. I don't think it's putting frosting on a turnip. Like, I actually think it does add to the story.
Okay. I appreciate all of that. I want to feel that way. What it feels a little bit like is a fan who is doing exactly what I have learned from the companion that LeVar Burton did. To take all of these things and try to make it make sense, because it feels like a lot of retconning and twisting a pretzel into making it make some sense. And it almost succeeds in some ways. Like, we get that last scene sort of makes it make a little bit of sense. The problem is that that's the interesting stuff, and I would have liked to have seen a lot more of Worf's exploration of this throughout the episode, or at some point learn that, oh yeah, he wants to be a leader, and that's the whole point. Here's what I want to read from the companion.
Yeah, you're gonna read Ira's quotes, which I disagree with.
Yeah, but he's the guy. He's basically Jesus of Star Trek.
But it doesn't mean that your subjective
it's
opinions
talking about
on
it starts from the whole thing where they want to make this episode because they were like, we want to do a legal drama, we found this guy, his episode is about Cisco, but like, nah, we bring in Worf on next season, so let's just like twist it into a Worf season. So we're starting already by working backwards and trying to fit Worf into the whole thing, which means we got to fit the Klingons into the whole thing. So your great idea, but your wormhole about the Klingons is exactly right, but they're trying to make it make sense. Moore has seen this technique, that's the the direct to camera, with great effectiveness, blah, 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 blah. It's sort of breaking the fourth wall, but not really, because he's actually talking to someone in the courtroom. Unfortunately, that's the point where the whole dang thing begins going wrong, according to our Stephen Bear. We got totally focused on structure and how it was going to work. All the nuts and bolts, he laments. Big mistake, but hey, it happened. Now it's a show that just didn't work. We did a show based on the intent of the defendant, just as the American legal system is, but we left the defendant out of the show. Worf just sits there, staring into space. We got blinded, Moore agrees. I was really intrigued by the writer device. What went by the wayside was Worf. He doesn't speak for chunks of the show. The guy's on trial and he barely speaks. And for that, Bear ultimately negates the power of the show. It's clever on a certain level, but ultimately pretty hollow as a drama, he says. Clearly disappointed. When we watched the final cut, our collective jaws dropped. Our basic response was, so what? Cut to...
Well, hold on.
Then it talks about LeVar trying to make it work, and then there's their closing.
All right.
The fact that everyone works so hard is appreciated by Bear. When you're trying to do something different and special and truly off the nose, time works against you, he points out. In the week we had to break the story, we had 2 weeks that Ron had to write it. There just wasn't enough time. So we rushed, and invoking a lyric from MacArthur Park, Bear sighs, we left the cake out in the rain.
Yes, I'm going to rebut one piece of that. And that is the idea that the defendant just sits there and doesn't say anything. That is our legal system. That is 90% of all trials, the defendant never says a word. That is what our legal system is.
Yeah, but you're making it like the show was trying to make that point, and it wasn't. Yes, that's interesting in a 2-hour conversation about it, but that's not what the show was doing.
But I don't think it's a failure. I think they accidentally arrived at how it actually plays out.
Okay, now let me just and look, here's where this podcast is interesting.
You can be good by accident.
We're going to disagree here, and that's fine, because look, you've also had 20-some years to ruminate on it. I'm telling you right now that after watching the show as a viewer would watch it, I feel a little hollow. And then I read that the creators of the show felt it was a little hollow. There seems to be some synergy there between the result, the cake I ate, to use their thing, and the cake they made. Hey, we forgot the sugar. Oh yeah, it's funny. It wasn't a very sweet cake.
And
but Keith is here. Keith is just pouring sweet low in his mouth. He's shaking flour. He's like, no, it's great. It tastes so good, man. I'm telling you. You've still got COVID lingering. You can't taste it. It's there, though. I'm telling you, it's good.
And the show is about the subjective viewpoint of the people watching it. Somebody heard clitoria being said.
And I'm telling you, clitoria would have been better. You know what, Keith? Unfortunately, clitoria, the character, much like the real thing, very hard to find.
Is it?
No, not really. Well, come on, go with my joke. Okay, so, folks, this is great.
Oh, my God.
Never before have we needed you more.
That's true.
What are your thoughts?
Step up, heroes.
But you gotta
tell Mike he's wrong.
You gotta, and I think the last time we did this, I was very wrong. So... But then there was one time I was very right. I very much won. So this will be a good tie break. Let us know in the comments whether you're listening on the podcast, which turns out a lot of people are. So make sure you come to our YouTube page or write an email to what are we using? Keith and Mike Entertainment at gmail.com and let us know what your thoughts are, or find us on YouTube and let us know. But Keith, before we even allow that, we do have to cement our opinions.
That's right. And we're going to adjudicate the audience average, whichever one is closer to our viewpoints, is the right one.
Turns out I didn't hate the episode, so I just don't think it worked as well as it could have, and it took some big swings that didn't completely pay off. That said, what did I go with last week?
Last week you gave an 81 to a session.
And what about the week before, the one I didn't like that people
Bar
liked more?
Association, you gave 76, even though you were wrong.
Yes. I don't think this is any worse than that. So I'm going to... it's right in line. My feelings are very similar to it. So I'm going to say 76 self-sealing stem bolts.
76, okay. All of the nits to pick aside, as a viewer of television, as somebody who spent 46 minutes watching it, I felt satisfied, filled up, and I enjoyed it. It scratched the itch of the legal drama on Star Trek. It gets a 90.25.
90?
90.25.
No way. Come on.
Folks, we need your help.
So Chancellor Jen gave it, she gave the Bajoran clap last weck. She went, So that feels like at least a... And in Jen's book, still probably an 89.
Down clip. Yeah, exactly. It's right where I am.
All right, so there you have it, folks.
There you have it. All right. Well, thank you for sticking around with us in all of this. Check out our other shows. They're all up there above you. Thank you for giving us out. If you're listening to this on the podcast, and I know you are, you can really help other people find us by leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other service that you are currently using. Really does help us, and it just makes it more fun. Yeah. We're not making any money off of it. It just makes it more fun.
For sure.
We do make money on our Patreon, patreon.com/KNM. Go and join the heroes. Join the heroes. Watch Mike watch Deep Space Nine.
Make us have to pay taxes. We're so close to having to pay taxes, but not quite. Actually, that's not true. I think we do.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah.
All right. So, there you go. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you back here next week with Hard Time. Woo!
Wait, where'd this one rank?
This one was 7.3 out of 10 on IMDb, which made it 105 out of 173 episodes. But that's not definitive. You are definitive. Till then, you have been watching Keith and Mike watch Deep Space Nine, Clitoria Lived!
Back in high school, each Sunday night, I'd watch the practice with none of my friends. I'd turn the dial to ABC to see the creep of the week that Bobby Donald defends. But I'm out of practice.
With your hosts, Keith Varney and...
Out of practice.
Season 8, Mike and Declio.
Way back in high school, most every night, my mom watched QVC, so I missed the practice. There was no TiVo, what could I do? Wait 15 years, get fat, then stream it on Hulu. Out of practice.
It's the Season 8 Oopsie Awards!
Jam along with us now, because you only have 2 more chances to bop along.